Hey there, good afternoon. It's 4:52 p.m. It is June 17th. And I was thinking, as I was laying on my bed today about how I wasn't taken seriously. Like when I first realized that I was a victim of human trafficking, I started making all these videos. And I know that some of the people who I consider to be perps were a part of my childhood, some of the kids I went to school with. And of course, my adoptive as well as my blood relations, who, like I said, I need to keep saying this. I feel more comfortable saying it, reiterating it, because these people had no legal rights over me. But I do know that, when I was growing up in Lancaster, a lot of people would always, because people were always bullying me. They were always bullying me, and I always had some sort of comeback for, wanting for them to provide a rational reason, a logical reason as to why they were constantly catching me up into their drama. So I remember, like, when I was younger, I had my first job was at a pizza place, and this manager, I'm looking back, he must have been another perp, right? So he was trying to give me a hard time. And I remember, like, telling him, it was like, I was breaking down, why he was doing what he was doing and how inappropriate he was. And he kept saying, "You just keep coming up with stuff." I'm like, you know what? I'm endless with it. I'm endless with it. Okay? People knew me. See, and the thing is, when you're dealing with people that you knew in the past, they always want to see you in the way that makes them comfortable. They want to see you as, like, they knew that I was going to be an outcast because of the reputation that the church gave me, right? So they use that as an advantage. Okay, now maybe it was the original goal of the church to, just make me converted, just to get me to convert, right? And that was it. Okay, that could have been their own thing. Maybe they didn't say go and bully her or whatever, but personally, I do believe that they did because of the large numbers and the whole involvement with the white supremacist groups. But still, my family used that as an excuse, okay, to bully me. Okay, so my point is that, throughout my life, people have constantly caused me problems because of this reputation that I was unaware of. Okay, but when I started making my channel and make videos, I was talking about things like, I introduced to a lot of people who may not even heard of this before. Like, I started talking about gang stalking. I started talking about employment laws, right? So, there's been targeted individuals making videos, before I even made videos about targeted individuals. I just understood what a target individual was. I understood, like, certain things about it, but this was my audience. My audience were the people who were targeting me, plus some celebrities, a few politicians and stuff like this. These are the people that were viewing me. These are the people that were acknowledging me, right? So I really get the feeling sometimes that as I was saying these sort of things, explaining, why it was going to this all this, I understand there was a lot of people who were just outright malicious. The people who, a lot of these quote unquote educated people who wanted to prove me wrong, who were desperate to, one up me so that they can get some sort of cloud. And, like I said, this knocked me off guard. Mind you, I didn't even know, I was just like, I was victimized, okay? Because, I just knew that I left Murray Family Farms on this weird bullying issue, right? And I was looking for work, and I kept encountering all these harassing people. And then what I felt was, I felt a deep hatred towards me. I felt it, okay? I felt people, talking about me. I felt people conspiring against me. And all of this was, a combination of different people who all believed that something was wrong with me, okay? So I know that in the past, these people were comfortable with me, number one, seeing what they wanted to see. Like, I've known that people noticed that I was somebody who always came up with a solution. I was somebody who always tried to straighten out situations in a logical manner, right? Which would leave a lot of people flabbergasted. Like, how dare you bring this up? How dare you? Because you're addressing me and you're in my face with stuff that I don't have any responsibility or obligation to follow. Okay, you're blocking my freedom. Get out of my way. Okay, so I've always been very, reasonable and somebody who's very logical, okay, about certain things. So when I was making these videos back in 2015, I honestly think that people just thought, well, she's just making up stuff or she's making up excuses, because they felt justified in bullying me. Just because my adoptive family was involved in it, and they're thinking, and you got these, what do you call it, unprofessional, so-called, like, HR people who were involved in it. Some of these, we call it passive aggressive stupidity. what was her name? Holly Colhane or whatever her name was. All of these people who really are fronting, meaning like people who really do not have the deep skills that you should have in order to be in these positions. All of these people kept coming up with these ideas, dismissing everything that I had to say. Okay, which now I think about, I was very terrified because I understood that I was dealing with some sort of cult mentality. Okay, because if I'm basically telling you to leave me alone, I have every right to make that request. You know what I mean? If I said I don't want to continue communicate with somebody, I have every right to say make that request. Just like that's the reason why they have things like restraining orders. Okay, if people become too much of a pest to you, they continually harass you. You can make it so that they are not able to come around you through a restraining order, right? So these people overstep their boundaries. And no, like I said, it's not about me like bitching about this, but the more I think about it, I'm trying to replay my trauma because I know none of these people have any sorts of morals whatsoever to give me the closure. Okay, all of these people to me are always going to be bad people in the back of my mind. You know why? Because they never just came up and said, Maria, this is what happened, and I'm acknowledging it, and I'm sorry. And I don't want to see these people anyway, mind you. Okay, I never want to see these people again. Okay, the people who were involved in it, I'm talking about, I accidentally connected with this person through a social media site a couple days ago. It was an accident, but I couldn't retrieve it or retract it, but whatever. Certainly these people in this community, okay, that knew what I was going through, who sat here and watched it, participated, thought it was funny, thinking that it's okay that you can sit here and plow down a woman. Okay, yes, I've dealt with trauma. So the very fact that they don't pick up that phone call and make that apology shows you, number one, that these people do not have a good heart. Okay, they allowed me to shoulder the burden of their crime. Okay, so therefore, no, I don't. I have a very logical mind. I understand who can be dangerous in your life and who cannot. I mean, who can and cannot be. And I will say that the majority of people are dangerous by default. You know why? Because most people do not have the ability to understand what is right and wrong. Number two, nobody's really ever seen an example. Most people are very lawless and they do not understand, the other, they're not able to empathize. That's a good one. Okay, so let me go into a couple of these messages that I wrote down. So yeah, I wasn't making it up. I wasn't making it up. So all through all this time while these people were discrediting me, right, I was telling these people, leave me alone, and I'm giving you the reasons why you should leave me alone. And I think when people start bringing up the legalities of an issue, okay, this is one of the reasons why I try to bring up the law, okay? And I also use a little bit of psychology, because when you acknowledge that you're being treated in a way that's not just unjust, not just unfair, but it's outright illegal, okay? And like the reason why that we have laws is to protect ourselves from things that are most likely to occur from nature, but also because, okay, the reason why it's a law is because most of the time that these things have occurred is to protect people from harm from themselves or harm from other people. They realize that this is a warning, that if you go beyond this point, this is the likely result of what's going to happen. So I ask these people, okay, if you continue to do what you're doing, knowing that it's going to have this kind of effect, then what does that make you? It makes you evil, right? It makes you evil because you know what is going to happen. That means your intention is to do exactly that. Do you see what I'm saying? So I understand how people work. You know what I mean? And so when you present this to somebody, like for example, if I was dealing with a manager back, because I know a lot of these managers, they are just absolute nightmares. They do not deserve the positions that they have. So like I give the example of them spouting off saying, you'll never work in this city again. They're basically admitting that they're going to be blacklisting you. So my question would be to them, do you understand that blacklisting can be the result of somebody, the end result of blacklisting is to kill somebody because they will not be able to secure employment anywhere else. So is that your intent? I'm going to ask you right now, is that your intention? Okay, and I'm just going to ask it and just leave it right there. Okay, and they're probably going to be flabbergasted. But if they admit, yeah, it is because I'm tired, I'm going to get you out of here, then we know the kind of person you're dealing with. See, I understand how to deal with people and get to the root of the problem. You know what I mean? And once you reveal yourself to me, we're done. Okay, because you don't have to tell me twice what kind of individual you are. Okay, and if you show it to me, especially in the duration of the times that I've been making these videos, you know what? Like I said, there are certain things that you can do that could take too long of a period of time for you to actually say that you're sorry, right? But that's not the point where I'm making this video. So I got the intuitive message earlier that a lot of people agree with me about the corporate structure. Okay, and the corporate structure has been run by people like Rex Laverne. Okay, Rex Laverne was a very, very dangerous man because of the kind of idea that he had about the workplace and the very fact that he could victimize a person through human trafficking, feel justified. Now he saw my videos. This dude was like manning everything that I was doing. He saw my videos. He knew the legalities of it. He should have listened to it. Okay, or he was just disregarding it. You know what I mean? And so this is a danger of people who disregard employment laws. Okay, like the person who originally thought of this, like some of these girls that were after me, like some of these girls who were the catty girls who were jealous, they are used to bullying girls in high school, and they probably saw their mom who was very discontent with their life. Because I know my mom used to do like that kind of stuff, right? She'd see a nice looking couple, and she would be she would have her binoculars on, okay, and she would be standing by the window, sitting here, giving these people the evil eye, talking about who do they think they are, and I knew that my mother hated herself. I knew she hated herself. You know what I mean? And so did my dad. He knew that she hated herself. And you know what? I can see that my mother was a very beautiful woman when my father married her. Okay, but she became very disillusioned with the whole marriage thing. And that's not me putting down marriages. I'm just saying is some marriages have been built upon manipulation. Okay? Some people have been puppets for a very long time. Okay? Am I blaming the church? I'm going to say they had a lot to do with it. Okay, they've ruined a lot of people's lives. Okay, and I know by reading my mom's old love letters that she wrote to my father that this is not what she really wanted. Okay, I think my mom must have had a very sweet, loving heart at one time. Okay, but shit happens. Okay, shit happens, right? And it turns you very cold. It turns you very cold. Okay, so, and of course, a lot of my mother's life was just circumstantial. You know what I mean? What else was she going to do, right? So she got in this situation and all this other stuff. But yes, when it comes to the corporate structure, yes, I do believe that the corporate structure needs revision. Like, and I believe, just like I said, society should be run on, what's good for human beings, and then also set those particular guidelines, this is the way it is already. I mean, if you think about it, people are allowed to drink alcohol, people are allowed to have parties, right? But there is usually some sort of guideline. Like, for example, there's some people who want to party till like 5 o'clock in the morning, right? Well, there could be noise ordinances, that need to be respected. You know what I mean? People are allowed to purchase certain items. You know why? Because if they didn't, we would have one shitty economy. Okay, so it's like you see these people; they want to control what it is that you do. They want to control what you buy. They want to control these sorts of things, and it's really not good for the economy. Okay, I love this country, and I love the laws that we have in it. Okay, some of them might be a little outdated. Some of them may need to be initiated in different states. But I honestly see where we truly do have freedom if people just minded their own business. You know what I mean? If they just minded their own business, if we just, and I know throughout society, okay, the ultimate question in every society, within every government, how do we tame these people? How do we tame these people? You know what I mean? Because it seems like what the biggest thing that most governments want to do, how do we tame evil? How do we, and that's why I'm talking about the New World Order, okay? Because I understand, okay, I know this sounds silly, but when you think about it, okay, how you can't, it's very difficult to wash those desires out of people. How do you get these wants and needs to be removed from people? It is natural for us to have wants and needs. So then the idea of paradise is, of course, to, have to realize some of our pleasures. Okay, now some people, they conjure up in their mind where I'm just gonna have every single need met, every single desire met. I don't know how far that can go. Okay, but the idea of having a place where people are perfect, like sinless. Okay, well, I don't think that's ever going to happen, but I do think that if we educate people, if we educate people on what is the proper behavior, and then they can make that decision themselves, but it would be determined based on their social standing within their social interactions. Who wants to be around people that they know are being rude? You really don't. Okay, so I feel as though I feel very passionate about this because, like I said, it's been very well known to me that I've been around very, very ignorant people, and like I said, when you're ignorant, you're pretty much evil. Okay, so I've dealt with that, and this includes people who I was raised with. Like I was raised with the Gordon family, and I used to always ask myself, because I have always been interested in this subject. Nature versus nurture. This is a very interesting topic. Okay, I am not like them. I'm not like them. Okay, they might have some of my blood because we already talked about that. But the ultimate thing is, most of this has been diluted, probably by Mary Gordon's blood or whatever. These people are not like me. We don't see eye to eye. You know what I mean? Even though we were raised in the same sort of environment. But yeah, corporate structure. I don't like corporate structure. Okay, there's certain things I like about corporate structure. Like, I talked about my admiration for things like Sarbanes Oxley, and I like the idea of putting certain measurements and stuff like this in place for the security of certain, like I would think about things like relating to finances. Okay, but like, there's also ways to maintain certain assets and stuff like that, property, procedures. Like, I was talking about, maybe I think certain companies should be audited, like, adoption agencies, or people who, places like human Department of Human Trafficking, stuff like that. Okay, these sort of regulations. Okay, I believe that certain regulations are important. That may be done in a corporate setting where they don't really necessarily see the importance of that in like a family-owned business. Okay, but I will tell you, like I said, for somebody who worked in family-owned businesses where they just think it's okay to leave like checks, stocks, and stuff like that with an employee. I would never steal from my employer. But like I said, the reason why I would not want to be in a situation where I'm holding the checks, right? And then I'm also holding the signature block, because if somebody was to steal from the company, they would be blaming me, right? Right. Okay. So yeah, I think it's important to take those same skills that I acquired in a corporation, and then also implement them. Not so big, not so out of the like blow it up or anything. It doesn't have to be something over elaborate. But I'm saying is there certain things that protect you. You know what I mean? So I do like certain things about corporate, but what I hate about corporation is I do not like the ego, the egotistical management. And I think a lot of people feel that way. They feel resentful about, that's what I'm getting from this message, that people feel the egotistical management styles, as well as the bullying. I mean, there's so much bullying that goes on. And really, it's like, when I think about people trying to push and shove their way into a corporate position, right? To me, the very fact that all of this is going on only so you can get in a position that you're going to end up hating. See, a lot of people resent. Like, I knew when I started really starting to catch on. Like, I really, you know what it is. I like my style of working. I like the way that I work. Meaning, like, I entertain myself at work. Okay, I entertain myself at work, but still stay productive. Okay. But we have issues like corporate people like Rex. He's not really a corporate person, but he was the kind of person, he doesn't want people to have a dust guard, or he wants people to wear uniforms and stuff like this. And there's a lot of people who grew up all their lives with a vision of what makes people successful, regardless of how much money you really have. Okay, like I've talked about my love of Marlo Thomas, but me being able to see myself in Marlo Thomas, like when I was younger. Okay, so I used to think, so my ultra, what do you call it? My alter ego would be like, I call her Black Marlo, because I like to wear nice clothes to work. I just do. Okay, it's a part of who I am, and it's a part of how I view my definition of professionalism. The problem with it is like a lot of people have a vision of what makes them successful, or the kind of person that they want to be, but then we hit the corporate wall. We hit the corporate wall. Okay, you had this vision, but they want you to change your clothes. They want you to do this. They want you to do that. And then, I remember having this discussion with one of my bosses. She was talking about how I'm trying to figure out, what can we offer? Because she wanted to get better quality people. Okay, I think this is what a lot of people want. They want better quality people on their team, right? So she's like, I'm trying to figure out what I can do to try to get more people. And I kept thinking, well, if I was to tell her what she really needed to do, it might be too, in her mind, too radical. But really what people want to do is they want to be able to bring their career into their workplace. That's what people really want to do. And this is one of the reasons why there's so much discontentment, because of the corporate structure. The corporate structure that makes you feel like shit. The corporate structure that gives you a heart attack. This corporate structure that's giving people strokes. The corporate structure that makes you already dread going to work on Monday when it's only Saturday evening. It makes you sick. Okay? because these people do not know what they're doing. And do I think that it's the education system that's encouraging this? Partially, but some of these people act like they don't have any education at all. See, like for example, when these people decided to blacklist me, that was not based on anything that they learned in school. Okay, it was not based on anything of relating to psychology. It was not any related to anything on relating to business law. What it was it was very impulsive. Okay, and it was actually based on their either number one, the rumor, the belief that I was evil, right? Based on their brainwashing through the church, which we already know religion does not belong in a work relationship. What do you call it? A work decision, especially if you're a corporation. Okay, if you are somebody who was doing it because you were offended because they were angry because I look nice and I care about that sort of stuff. Okay, explain. I remember seeing this girl. She was trying to explain. She was trying to get another girl in trouble about how she looked and how she was always doing these sort of things at her desk, right? And it really just sounded like she was jealous. Okay, and that is a very impulsive and very impulsive decision to make. Okay, especially when you bring other people into it and you try to create some sort of bullying campaign. Would I consider that sexual harassment? Yes, I would. How is it that these people could not recognize that? Okay, because they're not educated. Okay, not really. Okay, when I think of the issue of the blacklisting issue, like I had mentioned before, they should know better. You know what I mean? But did they not talk about these sort of things in their college? You know what I mean? So, yes, I would say the majority of people, majority of professionals that, are in the corporate structure, and I would say this in a lot of companies, even when they call it family-owned businesses, okay? And I do believe, I would say, and I know people are saying, well, what do you mean? Are you saying that you're an authority on this sort of stuff? Yeah, I'm going to say I am. I'm going to say I am. I'm enough so much that I feel compelled to write about it, to talk about it, to create and correct the problem. You see what I'm saying? So yes, I believe in my work and I believe in my observations. And I do believe that this is one of the main reasons why people resent their work. You know what I mean? It's because it really it does not coincide with anything that they visualized. Okay, and as a matter of fact, it demands that you sacrifice everything that you ever cared about, every dream that you had in your head, and then you end up going there. And really, when I think about the religious aspect of it, it's like the whole image of being in hell, where or somebody who sacrifices one thing to gain something that they really hate. That's exactly what it is. So it's like, okay, not only am I in a religion that I don't like, I'm in an environment I don't like, and I'm having to sit here and like promote views that I don't like. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, you have to be dead in order to be a part of the corporate world, and that's one of the reasons why I have a problem with it. And see, I know that even going back to Murray Family Farms, I remember me and Steve Murray having this discussion. You know what I mean? He was talking to me. And I think he was probably trying, because these people, they bring up conversations just out of the blue. And the reason why they do that is because they're trying to indoctrinate you. He's like, as a woman, as I'm thinking, as a woman, what? What? Well, he was trying to get around to the whole thing about, my role as a woman, like, finding a guy and all this. And I would have told him, I said, I'm married. And, he said, because at the time I was married to Joel, he's like, some people get married for the wrong reasons. And I'm like, looking at him like, that is none of your damn business. See, I understand a lot of people are comfortable with the construction of people's lives through work life. Okay. But, what that ends up doing is that plays a big role in your happiness. Because now you have these people invading into your home life, and even sometimes even being the creators of your home life. Now, I've heard about, people referring to these sort of relationships. They're called corporate spouses, this sort of stuff, which sounds a lot to like forced marriage. This is kind of like setting up and having men set up your jobs. And then if this doesn't work out, then, the woman's just kind of screwed over. Okay, and I get it. This is the Bakersfield community. Kern County has been known for human trafficking, and I hope that law enforcement is aware of this. You know what I mean? I do know that the Kern County, Bakersfield Police Department was aware of my issue with Rex Laverne. Okay, but I implore Kern County to take an interest in human trafficking, because it is a serious issue that is preventing many people from living their lives. There could be women being beat to a bloody pulp every day. This is one of the reasons why I was getting so emotional when I was thinking about it. Okay, some of these the perps that bullied me, the reason why I'm sure they wish they could have beat me to a bloody pulp every day, because they're not really in my vicinity. They were more keeping track of me through social media and stuff like that. But there are certain people who have possessions of an actual person in their home, maybe chained or something, or something even more sinister than that. Okay, and they can't call for help because in this community it was like these people are zombies. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? You know what I mean? People are basically saying that wait a second. Okay, so yeah, people, and I get into a mess that people are agreeing what I'm saying about people not paying attention, people not being blind, or people turning a blind eye or whatever. But see, my saying is like, yeah, I used to judge people or observe people about when they would talk about them being a Christian. So this tells me that Christianity, this brand of Christianity, is not like Jesus Christ. It has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. Okay, but what it does have is it has something to do with either a good old boys club, really, or forward filtering it down to religion, a white supremacist agenda, or whatever, something other than. Because, like I said, I when people bring up religion to me, and they would sit there and say, "Oh, I'm a Christian," I'm like, okay, Jesus would not be doing anything that you're doing at all. But anyway, yeah, I'm somebody who is passionate about changing the corporate structure, but not making it something that's cumbersome or something that's, people are going to regret. Like, I really do think, like, I talked about different work environments and stuff like that. Yeah, I think, I read a little bit about what Google did with their work office, their environment structure. And I think that's kind of cool. It could be expanded upon. You know what I mean? As far as how that environment goes, I believe should be more relaxing, and give people the liberty. And I found it odd about Rex Laverne talking about bitching about my office ornaments, when office ornaments have been around forever. They've been around forever, but I just think he liked bitching about stuff. I really do. Anyway, what was the other thing I wanted to say? Okay, yeah, I do. I had mentioned this before, that my old perps know that they realize that I don't want anything to do with them. I'm trying to get over my trauma, okay? And this is something I really want to leave behind. I want to leave it behind, okay? I kept thinking, about if I was to go back. I'm hoping to get back to Lancaster, but like, I want to go back to Lancaster, and I kept thinking, would you drive by your old house if you had the ability to do that? Do you want to go see your old house? Now, I did see that my old house was uh, up for sale. This is many months ago, okay? And I did see that they took pictures on the inside of the house, in which I saved them, okay? I downloaded the pictures and I did save them, okay? If it was available and I could have, somehow be in that house, yeah, I guess I would, okay? But I'm not going to bend over backwards and try to, to get it, mainly because, I don't know how I would be able to do that. You know what I mean? But do I think that people were trying to prevent me from actually living in there at one time? Yes, I do. Okay, because I think that Christians were trying to feel as though, or act, or try to propagate the idea that I was undeserving of anything because I was not Christian. Okay, so I think there was a lot of things that these people did that they shouldn't have done. Okay, now personally, if somebody was supposed to be gifted to the house, like when my mom passed away, I think that I would think the house would probably have gone to my sister Lisa. And wait, I'm thinking, wait a second, I'm trying to remember something. I do remember getting a check. I do remember getting a check. They did sell the house. Okay, so they sold the house. You know what I mean? And I don't know how the house is being handled because I'm basically looked upon as somebody who practiced the occult. My father was somebody who practiced the occult, at least in their eyes, okay? So I am not sure how they handled the house. Did the house actually get sold? I don't know. You know what I mean? Because they always act like, we were so taboo. We were such a taboo people. I will tell you, when most people come into my house, and I used to invite people over to my house many years back in the 90s, and you know what they would tell me? And I remember even my ex-mother-in-law telling me, she said, you have the most calming effect in your house. You have the most calming effect in your house. So when people come into my house, they know that it's a very pure energy. I have a very pure energy. So no, there's nothing wrong with that house, okay? But anyway, yeah, I'm not sentimental about the people that I used to know. I'm very sentimental about my childhood because those were very precious years. and very innocent and everything like that. And most of the things I've enjoyed in my life, I didn't need these people to enjoy it. Okay. Um, and so, yeah, I want to start over again. I deserve a new beginning. Okay. Now, like I said, I don't know anybody in Lancaster. I don't know anyone there at all. Okay. But I'm used to being there. Okay. And then also, I just feel as though I would be happier in another location. Okay. Because I honestly feel as though that if this community really did anything, if they were really concerned about me being victimized after what they did, I would be working right now. Okay. So I'm moving on, but I do need to be able to move on. And so I understood that the root of the problem was the churches. So in this respect, I felt as though I needed to make that adjustment to President Trump as well as the churches in the United States. And like I said, it doesn't matter if I'm ever going to live in Germany or not. You know what? I want my name cleared everywhere on this planet. Everywhere on this planet. Okay, I'm making myself clear. And see, I think a lot of people are like, oh, because most people don't stand up to the church. Okay, you know why? Because they've been led to believe that the church is the ultimate authority. No, it is not. Okay, and I needed to say this. Okay, it is not wise to bring your church organizations into a workplace, unless, of course, sometimes some organizations are religiously run. Okay, like there's some Catholic charities and stuff like that. Then it makes sense that you're going to operate everything revolving around your religion. If you work for like a company that, like a donation company, and your religion is behind that particular organization, it makes sense that since it's a religious foundation, then you're going to have a completely different set of rules when it comes to religion. You know, your religious organization. You know what I mean? People might be required to wear a certain, because it's based on religion, right? But if you're not, like I said, like Patreon, like I was trying to get help through Patreon and Ko-fi. Why didn't Patreon and Ko-fi just come right out and say, hey, if you're not Christian, we're going to help you? But I find it odd that they sit there and they, allow other people who do things like tarot readings and stuff like that on their station. So, basically these people were just bullshitters involved in the targeting ring. So we had Patreon in the targeting ring, we had Ko-fi in the targeting ring, and when I say targeting ring, I would say so many people got wrapped up into that. Okay, and what they normalize and think is normal is human trafficking. Okay, companies like these are responsible for the deaths and the destruction of many people. When you blacklist somebody, turn somebody away, especially like when I joined up on those platforms, right? Nowhere did it say that you had to be a certain religion or anything. These people allowed these people to rob me, and they assisted it. Okay, so think twice about where you upload your videos. Okay, yeah, I'm glad they understand. And sometimes, like I said, some people who, honestly, these people should have been served papers. Some of these people I didn't know who was involved. Like I didn't know Rex Laverne was involved until just recently, like in the month of February, right? But I remember back in 2023, before I realized I was a clone. Okay, I remember I was really upset and I just wanted to get on with my life for the last time. Okay, meaning I don't want to have anybody's creepy presence or anything like that. I went down to the courthouse and I got myself a shitload of forms because I was determined to serve every single member of my family, as well as Bruce Collins, his mother, his sister, and whoever I possibly could think of, to get the hell out of my life. Okay, and meanwhile, the Mormon Church was sitting here, and as well as Rex Laverne, letting me, take it out on everybody else. See, I'm tired of cowards, okay? Tired of them, okay? But still, my point is that, this sort of stuff, when people are involved in human trafficking, so going forward, and I'm just going to leave this little bug in your ear, okay? Going forward, when you start hearing people talk shit about me, okay, ask them this question. And you don't even have to ask them this question. You should know that they're only doing it for a particular reason. If they have some sort of issue with me, then they've got some sort of reason, and some sort of issue. You know what I mean? And so this is how I confront these people who try to bring up garbage in my life, or try to block me with their irrational behavior, or somebody who wants to bring up stuff like like I mentioned, the blacklisting thing. You know what I mean? Or doing something that they know is going to be harmful, or they're doing it just to bully somebody. Like, I had created in my presentation, right, in the Human Targets presentation, I'm talking about isolation, because I understand the psychological effects of isolation. This is a lot of the mental problems. And see, Rex Laverne wanted to do this, as well as some of these self-hating women wanted to put me in isolation because they did not want me to be around other people. They did not want me to have any sort of interaction. They wanted to create a narrative of to how people saw me, and they wanted to make me a public spectacle. So they put me in isolation, right? I will tell you, isolation is a very psychologically damaging thing to do. So when you see these shitty managers that are sitting here isolating a person on purpose, telling their employees, okay, you don't talk to her, we're not talking to her. I'm going to tell you right now, your workplace is toxic. So if somebody's brave enough to ask it, and hopefully somebody could stand up for that person, okay? But given the fact that I lived in this community, that person is probably going to have to stand up for themselves, okay? And then ask that stupid manager and say, you know what? Do you understand what isolation can do to a person? And explain to them the psychological damage. Why would you want to do that? Do you have another management method that you can use to utilize? Can you utilize another utilize another management technique in order to whatever, or discuss this issue with her? And see, the issue, the root of the issue is that they just did not want me to be around people because they felt as though I looked too good. You know, so the girls were jealous, and then also the issue of me being a burden baby, and they just felt entitled to do those sort of rotten things to a person. Let me tell you, when you see this sort of stuff, you need to recognize the fact that you are working in a toxic work environment where your boss is very abusive. See, and this is one of the reasons why I resent corporate structure, because of the intertangle and the intermingling that they do in your house. Like, you could be friends with this particular company that you work for, and then he's friends with your husband, and then your husband could be communicating with him. I'm just saying, okay, how these sort of work issues can interfere with your home life, okay, and how it can become a big ball of resentment. See, I want to keep my home life. I don't like intermingling because especially if I end up with a job that I hate. God forbid anything that reminds me of that hellhole coming into my house. That includes their shitty little coffee mugs, and I love office supplies, right? But, things like notebooks or pens and papers with the company name on it just makes me want to throw up. I don't want it in my house. I keep those things very separate. So good and well, I resent the fact that I had, these people, joining together, having people spy on me and all this other stuff. Yes, these people who did it, and the masterminds behind it, who kept adding to, let us do this technique, let us do that technique. And these people were like riding high, bragging about their education, bragging about how much better they were, how I am a nothing. I don't mean anything. And I was thinking, even back then, I never valued you. I've never valued you. I never wanted to be like you, never admired you. I simply do not care about you. Okay? Now, what makes me angry about this whole issue is the fact that these people always need to bring in a group of people to do it, right? And I'm going to go more into things like triangulation, more about gaslighting in my thing. And hopefully people will take an interest. I know that I've dealt with serious bullying and people who've tried to obstruct my creative venues. Number one, I will blame the church for that, right? Because people, have held things against me for my entire life because of the church, okay? And like I said, when people who have a position of authority, even though, fuck you, church, I will never look at you as authority, but a lot of mindless people do, right? And so they heard people talking about me from the pulpit, so they felt entitled to treat me this way. Right? So this is one of the reasons why I talk about, and they don't talk about these sort of things in psychology, or at least if they did, I didn't see anybody using that sort of logic when they managed this situation. So we had all these professionals getting together, conspiring against me. These people weren't professional at all, including these lawyers in this community. Okay, I understand most people they are not good at their profession. They're not. They're just like I said, fronting. They're doing just enough, just like the people in HR. HR representatives are funny to me because you know why? They know how to process things like FMLA papers and get what do they call it? Like maternity leave. They understand that kind of stuff. They've been to their not human trafficking. They've been to their sexual harassment training. And these people are sitting here walking around, all puffed with pride, and I would not hire not one of them. They're a dime a fucking dozen. See, when you have somebody in that seat, they're supposed to protect the company. Protect the company. And these people are not protecting your company. You know what they're doing? They are creating problems for your company by participating in human trafficking. If I was a company, I did believe I mentioned this in my my presentation about, People who use company cell phones, company property. If I was a business owner, and I'm not somebody who believes in antagonizing my staff. As a matter of fact, I'm very, very laid back. I personally think the more relaxed people are, the better they are. Okay, but there would be rules about company property, company, things, because if people are participating in things like blacklisting and interstate communications, talking about people with your company computer, you know what? Then that's your problem. Okay, now I've had a couple people call me from phone numbers that might have been their personal number. See, I don't answer those, and they'll pretend that they're working. That this is a work call. Okay, this is my line from work or whatever. I've dealt with people who've admitted they're calling me from their personal cell phone. I personally, if you're going to be doing work for my company because of issues like this, I'm aware of how these sort of things can become an issue. Okay, if you're going to bully people, you do that on your own time. Okay, you don't associate anything that my company does with your stupid games. And I would initiate this in my policies and procedures. Okay, and yes, I would let them know. I can look at your text messages. I can look at whatever I want to when it comes to my company property. If it's mine, I can look at it anytime I want to. I would let them know this. Okay, because human trafficking needs to stop. Okay, it needs to stop. It just, and I encourage people like the targeting individual community that do listen to me, and I have a couple of people on Facebook. Okay, but I'm saying is when it comes to the targeting individual community, all right, these people need to understand what it is to actually be protected. You know what I mean? And they're not protected. They don't talk enough about these sort of things like stalking in the workplace. Gossiping, things like, blacklisting, these illegal things that people do all the time. They do these things all the time. It's so normal to them, but it's wrong. Okay, you're not supposed to blacklist. Okay, and it's illegal to do so. So if you want to make sure that your company is running correctly, then I'm the kind of person that you need to work with. Okay, I'm looking to work for a company that can prove, to have a good reputation. I will make sure that the company has a good reputation. That would not be happening. Okay, I'm serious about my profession. I'm serious about working for a company that really wants to grow and do things. Okay, I do not want to be working for companies that do this sort of stuff. I don't want it. Okay, like I said, if I knew that I had an employee that was doing this sort of stuff, I would fire them right away. And then I might even call law enforcement. I might even call law enforcement on them for doing such a thing. You know why? Because human trafficking is a very serious offense. It is a very, very serious offense. And so, I was dealing with people who did not know this. You know what I mean? Wanted to always give me some sort of standardized testing. These people were so pompous. They were such braggarts. They could not get off of it. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, I was bullied by these people when I was younger. These people are evil. And this is why I'm talking about childhood bullying. No, we need to nip the hood. I mean, I will, okay? I figure I'm going to try to make an initiative to do something all on my own, okay? Henny penny, right here. But anyway, I personally feel as though this issue needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed, and it needs to be nipped in the bud before. Because if you had a kid, right, they have no future. There's kids right now who could be sitting here talking about your kid online right now, and by the time they graduate from college, they cannot get a job because of this human trafficking issue. I have playing games online, talking about people, blah, blah, blah. And then we have things like the church blacklist. And I'm going to tell you, President Trump, please jump on the church blacklist, please. Okay? It should not be in existing. Churches do not have the right to sit here and suppress people, prevent them from having a job, and let them die on the street. So not only my name needs to be off that data bank, legally, that needs to be addressed. What else do I want to talk about? I'm glad my rights are respected. I do understand that people were, because people always play the racial game, and I understand how people feel about race. It's not an issue to me. Okay, do I have my issues with certain people, racist people? Yes, I do. I'm not even going to lie, okay? And like I said, I have issues with a lot of different races, but when it comes to the kind of white hatred that I experience, there's nothing like it. There is nothing like white people and their anger and their hatred and their illogical rage. Okay, it's like, it's like something you've never, ever experienced before. It is outright, purely evil. Purely evil. Okay? So anyway, the message I get is that people, yes, continue working on my fundraiser, and I will go back and doing that tomorrow. But right for now, I am just like taking some time off and just getting my thoughts together. And I did want to, kind of strategize some things because, I need to make phone calls and that gets very tiring. It gets very tiring. Okay. But I have to do things. You know what I mean? I'm not somebody who just thinks it's okay to let people just take care of me or, there's certain things that I want to be. I want to be in an environment that I enjoy. And I'm never really going to enjoy my environment. You know why? Because the church created a lot of problems for me. Okay, really, the church should be sued, really, as far as I'm concerned. They should be sued, okay, because it affected my quality of life. I don't look at people the same. I only see people as evil. When I look at their faces, I look at somebody a murderous, evil person. And you know who made them that way? Yes, I'm going to say it again. The church did. The church made them that way. So, yeah, I would say, yeah, the church should be sued. You know what I mean? If other people want to put together a class action lawsuit against churches, that's exactly what they should do. Okay? I want to move on. I don't want to think about this sort of stuff. Okay, I'm getting an intuitive message that a lot of people feel the way that I feel about the corporations. That there's been meetings about me, for pretty much going on all day. So people have been talking about me. People are taking my psychological information, my information regarding psychology and law, and they're taking it seriously. Good. It's not like you can tell for yourself. This is the greatest example of, what I'm talking about. And you've seen it played out in front of your face. And I was talking about some of this stuff before it actually happened. So now you understand. I don't, I know what I have. I know what I'm worth, okay? And I want to work for the best company I can. The best companies, okay? And I just I'm not really impressed with what I've dealt with. I'm not impressed with it at all. Okay, it's I need something a little bit more upscale and a little bit more sophisticated. Well, a lot more sophisticated. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video and I will be back with another video sometime later. I get this intuitive message. Wait a second. I keep getting the message about sending my, I'm going to be sending more, emails tomorrow. And of course, following up, I get tired of it. But you know what? It is what it is, okay? The other message I'm getting is that people are responding to me. And thank you. Like I said, thank you, okay? But like I said, if somebody was being tormented, kind of like, feral children. Have you ever, I don't know if you've heard of feral children, but some people have some unfortunate kids, okay? When they talk about some people who have been, left out in the wild. Okay, there has been some weird cases where people were left out in the wild and raised by animals, okay? And because they have been so distanced from, the regular type environment, very few of these people are able to talk at a certain, regardless of how old they are. Okay, what you guys did was it can damage a person forever. Okay, I don't deal with people I've noticed how I've been affected when I see certain people's faces that come up on Facebook, and it incites a certain negative feeling in me. You know what I mean? And this is what you deal with when you're among people who are very uneducated and very ignorant, unfortunately. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is one of those things where it's a long-term effect, and it is very psychologically damaging, disturbing, especially if it caused me problems with insomnia. I would get up a lot at night. I was very anxious. I made several attempts to resolve the issue, but I was still dealing with a death trap that was created by a church, by a bunch of cult-minded people. See, and yes, it is the church's fault. And yes, the church should be guilty of attempted murder, is really when you think about it. And they should be persecuted, okay? But I don't have time to do that. But if other people have experienced it, feel free to get over what they call a class action lawsuit. Find a good lawyer, and not a lawyer that can be manipulated. It's very difficult to find, okay? And you might have to advocate for yourself. You know what I mean? Find out what you can and try to advocate for yourself. Okay, because like I said, most people, they're only surface level when it comes to their profession. That's one of the reasons why, when you talk about things like human trafficking, or you talk about the details of what even sexual harassment is, or they can't even recognize when somebody's being racially harassed. It's okay, they might see it in front of their face. They may have read about it 2 days before, and then all of a sudden it's happening in their face. Okay. Anyway, they'll just kind of go on about it. It's they don't get it. Okay, not everybody belongs in those positions. They just don't. Okay, so I'm tired of dealing with the unprofessional people. I am somebody who is 54 years old, and I'm tired of dealing with nitty pitty. Let's talk about hooking up with Home Depot so I can get $8.88 sales. That's going to get me to the next month or something. I'm tired of dealing with the piddly shit. You know what I mean? I'm somebody who's 54 years old. I have no retirement because I've worked for really piss poor companies. I need something stronger. And, it's like, it's not just that. It's the fact that, you know what? I deserve something to work in a real company. A real company with vision. Like real vision. You know what I mean? Instead of like, let's take time out to send like emails to blacklist somebody. Let's get involved with like, all these illegal type of activities. I want people who are seriously talking about how can we increase sales, constantly discussing how we're going to do this, the next product that's going to actually make our company better, this sort of stuff. Okay, is what I really want. People who are really thinking about making a lot of money, generating a lot of income within their company, so that people like me can be like, yeah, okay, this can work. I could possibly get some sort of retirement thing out of this. Okay, I could possibly do this. It could work, right? Because a lot of times I know they try to offer like benefit packages, just like my last boss was like trying to figure out how can I get better people. It's like, can you give people their life? Can you give people their life? Because that's really what people want. People want their life. Okay, they don't want it. They do not like the corporate structure. They do not. Okay, but I think a lot of people feel enslaved by the corporate structure. It has destroyed the lives of many people, very many people, and a lot of it could be because the religion intermerged with things like businesses. And so that's and like I said, sometimes we have business owners that are of that religion. Okay, but I know that when it comes to corporations and stuff like that, a lot of corporations, I don't know, like I said, we have a lot of Mickey Mouse or like I said, dime a dozen type professionals really everywhere. But I'm looking for something new. I want a breath of fresh air, and I want to work with people who are motivated, stimulated, people who see the importance of having financial stability, or as far as close as you can within a company. Because we never really talked about those things in the companies that I work for. It's always been nothing really. It's been like you go to meetings, but nothing really gets resolved. Somebody gets a task is delegated to one of the boss's son. Okay, the person that I worked with, the last job I had, these people never did anything. Okay, I remember like he gave me this assignment. I'm not trying. I don't really care if I'm bashing their family or not. I don't. Okay, they cause me a lot of problems. But a lot of times when you work in like family-owned businesses, you always have that lazy kid that's related to the boss and stuff like that. I don't have time at 55 years, getting closer to 55. I don't have time for bosses, family members trying to get their shit together, or people with their $8.88 sales that's filtering through from like their piggyback of a joint kind of venture that they have with the corporation because they can't stand on their own. Okay, I'm tired of weak companies. And the reason why we have weak companies is because we don't have educated people. This is a fact. Anyway, wrapping this one up. Bye.